Hello there. We're glad you could join us for another informative edition of Jamaica Magazine. I'm your host, Theodore Henry. This week has been a reminder, if you needed it, that we are very much still in the hurricane season. That means always be prepared. Remember, a tree with strong roots can withstand the most violent storm, but the tree can't grow roots just as the storm appears on the horizon. We have some useful information for you in today's show, and you won't want to miss any of it. So please, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Good day, I'm Lisa Rowan. This is your JIS News for Wednesday, November 6, 2024. Preliminary figures on the damage caused by Tropical Storm Rafael is projected between $500 million and $1 billion. Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness says a more definitive figure will be provided after today's assessment by the National Works Agency, NWA. He was speaking earlier today at the weekly post-cabinet press briefing. As chairman of the National Disaster Risk Management Council, Dr. Holness assures that the country is in a better position to respond to natural disasters now than in previous years.
We have a multi-layered disaster risk response mechanism, which we didn't have 5 years or so ago. Jamaica is at the stage where instead of borrowing to finance, what we do is we now set aside from the budget to be able to finance these things.
Dr. Holness says it is likely that the government will be able to fund the cost of the damage, adding that additional funding can be accessed if the amount reaches the threshold criteria under the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility. As a result of Tropical Storm Rafael, the NWA is reporting breakaways in Mount Prospect, Mount Airy, and Golden Spring in St. Andrew, as well as landslides in sections of St. Catherine and St. Thomas. Flooding is also being reported in Stony Hill to Toms River in St. Andrew, Chesterfield Drive in Kingston, Bogwalker Gorge and Sligoville in St. Catherine, between Lloyds and Low Mountain in St. Thomas, and Newley Road and De Carteret Road in Manchester. Minister with responsibility for works, Robert Morgan, says a team from the NWA, along with the necessary resources, have been deployed to clear blocked roads. Priority is being given to areas that require access by first responders.
In the general appraisal, we had about 15 roads blocked totally, 10 flooded. Minor road damage was about 2. We had about 7 single lane situations where there was only single lane access. And major, we had about 2 totally impassable roads. The approach of the National Works Agency whenever we have challenges like this is the first objective is to create access. And that is usually single lane access, which will give the opportunity of emergency services and residents in general to exit.
Minister Morgan says for major breakaways such as the one in rural St. Andrew, it will take some time to be addressed or for alternative solutions to be put in place. Meanwhile, Tropical Storm Rafael has also caused service disruptions to the National Water Commission NWC customers. The NWC says its systems have been impacted by heavy rainfall and power outages, which resulted in some customers being without water. High turbidity levels, landslides, and flooding also affected the Commission's ability to supply water to some customers. The entity says its emergency response teams are fully mobilized and are out in communities restoring water supplies where possible. Customers are urged to visit the NWC's website or social media pages for more updates. And the Met Office says a trough west of the island is being induced by an upgraded Hurricane Rafael, which is across the northwestern Caribbean. It's expected that the outer bands of the system will continue to affect the island, with occasional showers and thunderstorms across southern parishes and coastal areas. In other news, Minister of National Security Dr. Horace Chang has announced that the security forces are employing a multifaceted approach to combat crime in 5 key police divisions. During this morning's post-cabinet press briefing, Dr. Chang said recent multiple murders in Pleasant Heights, Cherry Tree Lane and Bowens Road highlighted the need for intensified efforts in these divisions.
They involve St. James, which is down by 32%, Westmoreland down by 12%, Clarendon down by 39%, Kingston West is down by 30%. There have been dramatic reduction there by virtue of the increased police activity and deployment and intelligence work in these areas. And of course, St. Andrew South, which is down by 14%.
Dr. Chang attributed crime in these divisions largely to gang activity, emphasizing the government's commitment to dismantling organized crime networks across the country.
Our intelligence has identified just under 230 such persons of high priority. They have been prioritized for investigation, and so far, 90 of them are wanted for murders and other major crimes, and are being pursued by our fugitive apprehension teams across the country.
The security minister reports that from January 1 to November 4, there has been an overall reduction in major crimes by 15%. Murders have decreased by 19%, shootings by 9%, rapes by 20%, and robberies by 21%. August to November 2024 has recorded the lowest crime numbers in 5 years when compared to the same period in previous years. Minister of Justice Delroy Chuck is encouraging judges across the country to make use of the ministry's alternative justice services. Speaking at a recent Child Justice Guidelines training seminar in Trelawney, Minister Chuck emphasized that these services have the potential to alleviate the burden on the courts. He urged that both witnesses and the accused should be referred to these programs.
We have not only restorative justice, we have child diversion, victim services, and mediation, because these are matters which will help not only to ease your burden, but can transform lives if people take on these alternative services and repair the problems that they have with one another.
And finally, the Electoral Office of Jamaica, EOJ, received nominations of candidates for the by-elections in 4 divisions today. Nominations were cast for Dwayne Smith as Member of Parliament for St. Andrew Northwestern and Marissa Dalrymple Philibert for Trelawney Southern. Councillors were also nominated for Anion Town in Clarendon Northern and Morant Bay in St. Thomas Eastern. All 4 by-elections are scheduled for November 22. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Lisa Rowe. Thanks for watching.
We know many areas experienced flooding and landslides during the passage of Tropical Storm Raphael. One of the sometimes overlooked consequences of this is the contamination of our water sources by silt and debris. To be safe, here are some tips to purify your tap or stored water for safe consumption.
So the first technique that will be explained today is the technique of boiling. What we advise is for you to obtain clean water, water that you can see through. Then you would place it into a pot, you'd cover the pot and allow for it to boil. Allow for rolling boil for about 5 minutes. Then it would look something like this. Then after you would have achieved the 5 minutes of rolling boil, then you'd allow for it to cool. Then you would place it inside of another container.
Use an airtight container to store your water. If the water is not used within a few weeks, be sure to carry out additional treatment of the water that may include boiling the water once more.
Do your part to prevent mosquito breeding. Mosquitoes will breed in any container that holds water.
Tightly cover water storage containers such as drums, barrels, buckets and tanks. If this cannot be done, pour cooking oil on the water surface. Punch holes in all tins, plastics and beverage boxes to prevent the collection of water before disposal. Cover all tires or fill with dirt to prevent water collection. Scrub all vases once per week to remove mosquito eggs. Use mosquito repellents to protect yourself from mosquito bites. Dispose of garbage properly by placing in plastic bags and securing properly to prevent water collection.
A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Every shower of rain is a blessing doesn't always ring true if it causes significant damage to your property or worse, threatens life. But certainly, the continuation of life is the blessing, and we say thanks for it after every weather event that brings heavy rain. What we don't say thanks for are the pesky insects that seem to multiply once the water has settled. And you know what I'm talking about, mosquitoes. Remember though, there is action you can take to limit their presence in and around your homes.
We're looking for any container or anything which can hold water. It doesn't need a lot of water for that mosquito to deposit its eggs. Very shallow quantity of water they can deposit in it.
The rain has fallen and this has collected water. And if it is allowed to sit in the environment for a couple of days, the Aedes aegypti will breed on it. This is a plastic over a pail and the water is on the plastic. This is a beautiful breeding site for the Aedes aegypti mosquito. We have a similar one right here. There's water on the top of this container and the Aedes aegypti mosquito will breed in it. Once the water begins to evaporate and she has a space to lay her eggs, she will lay her eggs and this will then become a breeding site. Turn it over. We do appreciate that roof gutters are very necessary in some areas that do not have pipe water, so it helps to collect the rainwater when it comes. However, if these roof drains become blocked by trash or other things, then it makes the water stagnant and it becomes a major breeding site for the Aedes aegypti mosquito. So it's important if you have these roof gutters that you keep them clear, that the water is able to run. Even among your plants, we have plants that are, because of how the leaves overlap each other, they are able to collect water. And Aedes aegypti loves to breed in those environments. We suggest that persons do. If you think you love these plants and you want them, put them in pots. So when they do collect water, you're able to pick up the pots, drain them out and put them down. Because as it is right now, it's very difficult for us to get rid of the water and they will just continue to be in the environment as breeding sites.
This is a tire which has been discarded, but it's just in the backyard. And what we have now is apparently rainwater has now settled inside there and we have it breeding. The Aedes are back to the breeding inside here. It can be used as an enclosure for your plants, like a potted plant situation. So what we'll show you now is how we can have it filled with dirt that will ensure that when rain does fall, mosquito will not breed in it.
There's also a method of stacking the tires so that they will not collect water. We advise the tire shop owners to, for each tire that they get, to punch a hole in each of the tires. Once that is done, they can stock them in this plaiting form. So they have one row going in a particular direction and then another set going in the opposite direction, and they will continue with this. What this does, it allows the water to be directed towards where the hole is bored. So even if the rain comes and water goes in, the water will not settle but go out. We know that most churches have what is called a baptismal pool. And we have found baptismal pools to be a major breeding site for the Aedes aegypti mosquito. So what is it that churches should do? We recommend that all baptismal pools be covered properly so that the mosquito will not have access to it for breeding. Sometimes the pools are shaped very funny and so it's very difficult to cover. In those instances, we ask persons to empty the pool at least once per week and After emptying the pool, we ask that you scrub the sides to ensure that you have dislodged all the eggs. So we saw many sites that were breeding the Aedes aegypti mosquito today. And we saw that these sites were found in and around our homes, business places. And if we do not deal with these breeding sites, they are going to continue to be there, posing a risk for the transmission of diseases because they are breeding the Aedes aegypti mosquito. So you must take action to rid your environment of those sites. So what is it that we're asking you to do? We want you to make this a habit. Once a week, search for and destroy the breeding sites of the Aedes aegypti mosquito.
You know the adage, water is life? Rightly stated, as it supports all living beings. But with the passing of a hurricane, supply may be compromised and properly stored water could just become our lifeline. Step 1. It is best to use food-grade containers to store water. This means that the material used is fit for human consumption and won't have toxic substances entering your water. Step 2. Be sure to wash and rinse the container thoroughly in preparation for water storage. Step 3. After filling the container, be sure to seal it tightly. If it has a screw-on cap, ensure it's tightly closed. This will prevent contamination. Step 4. Also, to prevent contamination, store water in a cool, dark place. This is to minimize exposure to temperature fluctuations, which can degrade the quality of the water and the container. Step 5. Replace stored water frequently to ensure freshness. You may use older water for non-drinking purposes. Step 6. Additionally, you may want to label the containers with the date of storage. This will help you keep track of how long the water has been stored. Step 7. Drinking water containing bacteria and viruses can lead to serious health issues and diseases such as diarrhea, cholera, or dysentery. If you're in doubt as to the state of your drinking water, you may want to apply water purification methods such as boiling to get rid of any bacteria. Step 8. Finally, going back to point number 1, do not store water in containers that have been used for chemicals or substances that can leach into the water and your system. Ensure that your stored water remains safe and drinkable. Protect your water, and it will protect you.
Where and how you build your home makes a world of difference to how that structure can withstand the unique climatic and environmental conditions that come with living in a tropical climate, such as we do. Up next, an architect gives us valuable advice for building safe and strong.
Living on an island where the climate can shift dramatically, from scorching heat to sudden downpours and the occasional natural disasters like hurricanes and earthquakes, and knowing how to design our homes is more crucial than ever. Each site, whether on flat land or mountainous terrain, presents unique challenges that emphasize the importance of tailored, site-specific architectural solutions that cannot be overstated. In a recent discussion with an architect, Conrad Jackson, we delved into the complexities of designing buildings that harmonize with their specific environments. And according to Mr. Jackson, effective design begins with choosing the right materials and adapting to local conditions. Weather is among the conditions to be considered when building. For Jamaica, heavy rainfall is a significant concern at different times of the year. Mr. Jackson makes the point that the initial step in the design process involves knowing the environment in which you are building.
As it relates to heavy rainfall, once you start doing your investigation as a consultant to go onto a particular site, one of the things you do is you interview the locals and you also do your research for the type of activities that would have taken place within the last 100 years as it relates to climate change, the impacts of flooding, and how the impact of climate change and the increase in the sun and the intensity of the sun for the specific year.
To combat rising temperatures, insulation plays a crucial role. It's recommended to insulate wooden walls with materials such as foam or creating air cavities with concrete blocks to significantly reduce heat transfer. In addition, incorporating cross ventilation and shading devices helps to minimize direct heat gain. For homes near the coast, where rising sea levels and salt corrosion pose risks, selecting the right materials is essential.
You need to use those particular materials to mitigate against the salt corrosive nature of the environment. So for argument's sake, for a door, you'd probably be using aluminum hinges or brass hinges or brass hardware or nickel type finished stuff that you would not necessarily have to use inland.
When it comes to hurricane-prone regions, the choice of roofing is critical. Mr. Jackson describes a roofing solution called a standing seam.
So what that is a corrugated type of sheeting that has a seam that's about 1.5 inches tall. Which is also that 1.5 inches tall seam is specially crimped, and it is all actually screwed down to the rafters and the sacking that is underneath that sheeting to give it stability in case of a hurricane. The seam itself is so tall that the amount of water that will capture on a roof between the run from the peak of the roof, the highest point, to the eave of the roof, that the water will not build up and pass the height of that seam. The sheeting that would be used in that case can also be cut specific to the length of the roof, which means that if you consider old-time zinc roof, they came in particular lengths because it could only be transported on shorter trucks and it was easier to handle. But the roofing material now, which I'm suggesting, which is standing seam, can be cut at the specific length of the roof.
For existing structures with zinc roofs, Mr. Jackson recommends adding fiberglass insulation between rafters.
As it relates to heat and the roof, you can get roof sheeting that is also insulated with foam embedded in it, as well as there are numerous things that can be done. You can put in fiberglass insulation in between the rafters, which will help to minimize the heat gain between the rafters, the ceiling, and the occupant of that space. So it acts as a buffer then, and it acts the same way it does as the foam, sprayed on foam like you see on the exterior of some of these buildings. It really just helps to slow down the heat transfer from the exterior to the interior of the space.
Ultimately, as Mr. Jackson stresses, it's important to remember that a house is one of your biggest investments.
Real estate in general, for most persons, when you're going to be doing this, choose wisely. Use registered professionals who can help you fulfill your dream and make this dream become a reality in the right way.
Hurricane straps help keep your roof secure during heavy winds. Strap is advice. Make sure your home is secure. Strap down your roofs to withstand the wailing winds of hurricanes and other major storms. Don't wait until it's too late.
It's a very simple thing. It is inexpensive and it doesn't require much technical know-how to do it.
Strap down your roof now. Save yourself a world of hurt later.
Before the break, an architect broke down some of the things to consider when building in a tropical climate. Something to also consider is the danger that comes with constructing your home in an informal settlement, where certain basic infrastructure would not be in place to support the safety of you and your neighbors. Please, take heed.
It is clear that some Jamaicans, have chosen to live in areas which are dangerous to live in because those areas are susceptible to weather events. People have chosen to live on hillsides that are precarious. People have chosen to live very close to river banks, and some even build in river courses. We have quite a number of communities that are perched precariously again on gully banks. We give God thanks every day that when we have these major weather events, we have not seen any significant loss of life or damage. But I would say that it may not always be the case, and I would use this opportunity to urge Jamaicans that when we understand the issues of settlement, we understand the issues of housing and where you can find marginal land to live on and so forth, but you should, in seeking to settle, in seeking to live, to find a place to live, take into consideration the environmental issues and the climate change issues, particularly the environmental issues having to do with your access to water, with the stability of the slope. If you have to clear the land, how will that affect the stability of the slope? And then pay attention to the climate change issues. You're going to have frequent weather events. And what we notice about these frequent weather events is that they are of high intensity. So normally we would have a 50-year weather event. But we're now having these 50-year weather events once every 2 years. And if that is the case, then it is a creeping destruction of the infrastructure, and the probability of your house, which is built in a danger zone, being damaged. Government will try to respond, but the government will not be able to respond to everybody's needs all the time. So we have to be smart about it. Government has to enforce as well, has to put down its foot to say, listen, we understand the issues, but for your own safety, you just can't build in these areas anymore. We will have that conversation with the people and enforce the legislation that are in place, and maybe we would have to put in new legislation.
This is where we close the pages for today, but be sure to join us tomorrow on this station at this same time for another show geared to keep you in the know. Until then, visit our website, jis.gov.jm, for this and all other offerings. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Theodore Henry saying keep safe and stay inside if you don't have to leave home.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.